I thought it was very interesting hearing about young audiences and hearing about their consuming radio, and really seeing how radio is still really important to people in the top 40, and just that sense of companionship is really important to young audiences, which is great, and what I've really been looking forward to hearing.
I thought it was an interesting morning. I particularly enjoyed Justin's right after mine, just listening about 13-and-a-half-year-olds and what they're doing and what their lives are like. And I think reinforcing that, remembering that there's still some common human things that are going on and needs that happen at teenagers and all ages. And actually there's some hope for radio in that, in the role that it can fill in people's lives and that sense of belonging for younger age groups and the editorial role for that. So I thought that was particularly interesting, I think.
Well, I thought the construct of the event was really interesting. The range of speakers fitted together well, and there were some clear themes that linked all of the presentations together. I also thought it was interesting to hear the new research studies that were discussed and debated, and how the themes coming out of those linked into the wider debate about the use of electronic measurement to recall passive listening or passive exposure to radio.
I mean, there's a good mix of kind of reality and optimism. So it's easy to get pretty gloomy, especially when you're talking about youth research, especially often leads you to be quite gloomy because it looks like the forecast, everything's going to change. Typically it spells decline for traditional media into digital, and often you can end up in quite a gloomy place. And I think what we've seen across media recently is people becoming less gloomy about the future. There is signs of optimism. This kind of ecosystem model that I think is a good analogy for it stops people thinking it's going to be the death of the oldest medium, which never actually happens. So I thought tomorrow's listeners stuff, especially Margot's piece, actually shows there's a pretty robust kind of heartland to radio. My stuff showed that actually there's some pretty long-term truths that explain why kids are into radio and into music and where it all fits. So I was glad to not see kind of gloomy stuff. And in terms of measurement, the future is definitely going to be mobile. I mean, I like the idea of kind of stick with what you know until we're ready to change it. But I can't see it not going to a people meter. And I've been a long-term fan of people. When I was agency side, I was a long-term fan of this because radio especially misses out on all of the stuff that you don't remember.
I think when you're looking at buying advertising, increasingly people are used to the control that Facebook gives you, the control that Google gives you, both in terms of reaching audience, but also in terms of getting information back. And certainly in terms of the media measurement side, anything that we can do in radio to make sure that we get more information is really important.
I think it's always good for us as an industry to be moving on and making sure that we're pushing what we're doing in terms of measurement. I think I think there is something in the mobile idea and the fact that that's such an important technology for more and more people nowadays. It's very normal for other people. It's very flashy for some people, but I think it's important to be tapping into mobile. I think it's probably I think I probably stand with Jerry on it from a radar perspective in terms of let's watch it develop and see how we go. And get to a point where it's such an important thing for the industry at the moment. Just as Mark said, it is a currency, so we sort of have to take it a bit cautiously, I think.
From what I heard, I think it's a really interesting development, and the reason I think it's interesting is because rather than introducing a new device, it's actually introducing a piece of software into an existing device that people use every day and carry around with them pretty much all of the time. And I know with tests into electronic measurement devices in the past have demonstrated that human compliance is a real challenge. So I think that will help overcome that potential hurdle to a large degree. And it's interesting because it also mirrors the way radio is being incorporated into existing devices as well. So another parallel coming out of the content today.
I think the research industry is going towards mobile in a big way anyway. I like the idea of getting much closer to media moments because I think people forget. Or get it wrong, they rationalise it and tell you what you think, tell them what they think you should know. It looks pretty watertight. It looks pretty watertight to me, which is a big benefit. The big challenge will be getting the radio industry to cope with change, because they've got 10 years of numbers that don't really change that much, and this is going to fundamentally change things, and that'll be the biggest challenge.